Hey everyone, this is Ryan. In this video, we'll take a look at how to use the timer to slide out a drop-down menu or a menu here and slide it back in. Also, if the user happens to select one of the buttons here on the menu, it will disappear and the user can slide out again if they need to. And again, one thing you can use this is for other components other than a menu, but it gives you a good idea of how you can use timers to move components across the screen in a certain time frame. Okay, so let's take a look at our current setup. So currently on the screen, I have an icon for the dock left and dock right. Currently, there's nothing been triggered on the on select right now. And down below, I do have a menu I've created. I do have another video on how to create menus, so that's in the description of this. But for now, what we're going to focus on is how to shift this menu out left to right. And just to talk about the menu, one thing I want to mention is the way you set up your menu, you should anchor all the controls within it to one of your main controls. So in this case, I did the backdrop here. So the backdrop, the X parameter is set to 30. However, all the other icons that we have here, such as these icons here, you'll see being highlighted. If I go to the X parameter here, property, you'll see that always references the backdrop menu X +5. And you'll see here how, for example, the labels, if I go to the X property there, it references the backdrop menus X property +30. So the reason why you want to do that is if you happen to switch the X property of this one component, the whole menu will move. So that's important when you're using timers, is so that you don't have to copy and paste that formula each and every time. It's just more efficient to do it this way. So let's start and adjust the screen here. So let's go to the icon at the top here. And what we're going to do is update the on select property. So what we want to do here is a couple of things. We want to identify the direction that it should appear based on the selection. So to do that, what we're going to do is we'll create a variable here and we'll call it dock direction, and we're going to say out. Okay. However, this will only work based on the based on what's being selected. So if the user selects it once on the out, we want to select the reverse if they want to dock it in. So to do that, what we'll say is if dock direction equals out, we're going to create or update the variable to say it's in, otherwise it defaults to out. Okay, so we're almost there. And I have to end quote there and close it. Okay, so we have that in place. So let's adjust the icon. So if I go to the icon here, you'll see that it's dock right. So that's our out icon. So what we want to do is say if the dock direction equals, and we'll say out in this case, we're going to use the dock left because once it's out, you want to push it back, and otherwise it's dock right. So here, if we press Alt and we click on it, you'll see how it moves each time. So if we go back to the onSelect property, what we want to do is update another variable, and we're going to set it to slide timer. We'll set that to true. Okay, so now that we have that set and that will start our timer based off it going out or in, let's add the timer to the app. So to do that, we're adding a control, we're searching for timer, dragging and dropping it down here. By default, it's set to 60 seconds. Instead, we're going to switch it to 1 second. Now you can adjust this to whatever you want. It just depends on what kind of speed that you want here. Okay, we do have an error here, so let's just take a look and see what that is. And we have an extra bracket. Okay, so let's go to the timer and let's actually adjust one more thing. So we have the duration set. We're going to update the auto start to the slide timer variable. And one thing we will do is we will update the on timer end property here. And we're going to add a couple of lines here. One is going to be, we're going to set the slide timer to false. And we will reset the timer to 0. So we'll go from 1 second to 0. And we'll set that to false. And we will reset self. Okay. One other thing that you may want to do is, because you're working in edit mode here, and it may be set to true, the timer, and you want to manually reset it to false, what you can do is go to the on select property and just paste that in here. So that way, if you're press play and you happen to click on it, the slide timer is always going to be false. That way you won't run into any issues with it being stuck in true mode. Okay, so let's go back to the controls here, and we'll go to our button backdrop. We're going to update the X property to reflect the timer now. So what we want to do is we want to go from out all the way to the left, and we want to bring it in to the app. So to do that, what we're going to do is bring in the button's width. Okay. And then we're going to add, you'll see how it's now to the left. Now we want to add, based on the width and the timer, the location that it should be at, based off of between 0 and 1 seconds. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to add the button width here. And we're going to multiply it by the timer's current value. And we're going to divide it by the duration. Okay, so basically the value, it's going to be 0, and the duration is 1000. So when it goes between 0 and 1000, it'll multiply. It'll give us its final position. So if we go back to the app and we press play, let's go in, you'll see how it moves in. Okay, so we're getting the slide in effect that we want. Now, what we want to do is, of course, adjust this. So if we go back to our button, there's a few things we want. One is for it to slide out, like into the app. We want it to slide back out of the app. We want a resting position once the timer is complete and it's pushed out, and we want a resting position when it's pushed back in. So there's 4 things that we want to do there. So what we can do is we will say if, and we'll say if the dock direction equals out and the slide timer value is set to true, we will be using this calculation, okay, that we just created here. Now, if it's set to in, so we'll just copy this, and what we will do is just copy everything here, and we'll just switch this around. All we have to do is make a couple adjustments here. So one is we no longer need it to include this part here. So we're just going to remove that. And so it's going to be 30 minus this. So the width of the of our drop-down menu, and it'll shift it over. Okay. And the last 2 items that we need are the resting position. Okay. So what we want to do here is saying if the dock direction equals out, and the slide timer is false. So we'll do that there. We're going to have a resting position. Here it's going to be 30, and otherwise it's going to be 30 minus the width of the button. So we'll do that. We'll close that up, close it up, and we'll close it up. So we have all 4 points available here. So if I go and press play and I select it, you see how it goes out. If I select it again, it goes back in. Okay, so it's working exactly how we want. Now we see that it's above on top of our control there. So what we can do is this. We can go back to our control here, and this is this left nav little rectangle that we have here. We could bring that to the front. Okay, so it nicely disappears. But you'll see if I press play here, we have a little bit of the menu appearing. So it's always not exact. So what you can do is change around some of the parameters here. So we're going to just move it back, let's say 28 pixels here. So this is resting right now. So we press 28 and we press play. You'll see that it disappears. And perhaps instead what we want to do for when it's past the left nav, we might want to bring it, further out. So to do that, we might say, in this case, we might just bring it, +3 or something like that, just to bring it a little bit further out. So what we could do here is just add more to the width here. So we'll say +3 in this case, just so that it slides further out. And then from here, we could say the resting position is like 31. So you have to play around with your numbers here just to get into the right, pixels on the screen. So if I go and I press play, you'll see it goes out. We can see the whole drop-down menu here. So that's great, or the whole menu. It's not really a drop-down anymore. And we can push it back. Now, one thing that we can do is you'll see that when I click any of these, what do we want to happen? Usually in that case, what we want to do is we want to update the parameter here on each to say that it's in. So we're just automatically pushing it out, or sorry, back in to the left nav. We don't need a slider to slide at that point. So to do that, what we can do is just paste this in and saying, yep, you're going to the in position at that point. So we'll go and update each of these, and then we'll be able to test it. So if we go back here and we click it, so let's say, hey, we're going to click edit, it now disappears, and the menu, you'll see we can dock it out if we want to. So it's a very nice way to use this menu with the user, properly clicking it, and we don't have it sliding back out of the app. So that's it on how to slide out a menu from the left side of your app. If you want, you can also adjust it to where it slides out from the right, from the bottom, from the top. All you have to do is just change around if it's the X property, the Y property, and whether you're moving it to the left or to the right, so plus or minus the values. Otherwise, it's pretty simple to do, and it makes your apps, you can gain back some real estate and just add some finesse to your apps.